Hey y'all, welcome to Killer Queens, a true crime podcast. I'm your host, Torella, and like most millennials, I've always had an obsession with true crime. On KQ, you'll find light true crime stories, millennial hypes and gripes, some adult language, and maybe a special guest here and there. Just like a 90s sleepover, we're just a couple BFFs hanging out, so gather round and let's launch right into it. This episode contains discussion of child abuse, both physical and sexual, and domestic abuse. Listener discretion is advised. Picture it. Detroit, Michigan, 1994. The Winter Olympics are just around the corner, and both you and your rival are training for that gold. The next thing you know, Nancy Kerrigan has been clubbed on her right leg by an unknown assailant. You, Tonya Harding, claim to know nothing about it. Okay, so we all know it. The whack heard around the world and the fall of Tonya Harding. And I want to give a hey girl thanks to Beth for writing this one up and requesting it. And she said this, and I'm honestly surprised too. She was like, I'm shocked nobody else has requested this case, at least not submitted a case request form. So there you have it. All right, let's get right into it. Tonya Maxine Harding was born on November 12th, 1970 in Portland, Oregon to LaVonna and Al Harding. At just 3 years old, Tonya began figure skating and trained at the Lloyd Center Mall and then later at the Clackamas Town Center Mall. Tonya ended up dropping out of high school at the age of 15 during her sophomore year to focus on figure skating. She did later get her GED though. Tonya was also interested in hunting, fishing, and drag racing. She also learned about auto mechanics from her father. Due to financial struggles, Tanya's mother, LaVonna, hand-sewed many of her skating costumes. Tonya has made claims that she was abused by her mother. She has stated that by the time she was 7, physical and psychological abuse from her mother was a regular part of her life. LaVonna admits to one instance where she hit Tonya at an ice rink, but denies regularly abusing her daughter. And other people saw this. She hit her with like a really heavy hairbrush, and people saw it. According to Tonya, her mom was cold. There was not a lot of love in, at least between from her mother to her. Her father had a lot of health problems. He would lose jobs because of this. And it definitely seemed like Tonya loved figure skating. She started when she was really little. But once her mom saw that she was talented at it, she really pushed her to keep doing it and pushed her to make that her life, I think. It feels like and comes across as her mom saw this as a meal ticket, and that's why she was so supportive, because she wasn't, again, according to Tonya, she wasn't supportive of anything else in her life. Just that. Just something that could benefit her if she did well enough, you know? Tonya has also said that she is a victim of rape and sexual assault from her older half-brother, Chris, when she was a child. In 1986, she called the police about the abuse, and Chris was arrested. He spent a short time in prison, but LaVonna and Al were both in denial about these abuse allegations. Tonya competed at the national level, and by 1986, she had finished 6th at the U.S. Nationals. In 1991, she won her first national title while also becoming the first American woman to complete a triple axel in a competition in Minneapolis, Minnesota. No other woman, U.S. woman, had done this before and landed it properly. And she did. I mean, she fucking stuck it, okay? And if you watch the video of that, the look on her face is the most unmitigated joy and accomplishment that you could ever imagine. I mean, she knew when she went for that jump. And the triple axel is when they spin 3 times in the air, like real fast. They're going real fast. But obviously, when you spin that many times, you got to land it too. And a triple axel is something that, you know, when you're at home and you're watching the Olympics, you're like, wow, could have been better. You know, how we like judge athletes for things that we could never do. I don't. I stand in awe of any athletics at all because I can do none of it. But I mean, it looks real fucking hard. And also, how are you not dizzy? Like so dizzy after, but they just like keep going. It's incredible. It's incredible. But she stuck it, man. And she was the first American woman to do it in a competition. She made history. It was incredible. Obviously, a super proud moment for her. It may be her proudest moment in her whole life, like to date. It was incredible. In 1992, Tonya took the silver medal at the World Championship and then placed fourth in the 1992 Winter Olympic Games in Albertville, France. I feel like Albertville is not how you say it, but that's how I'm saying it. While competing, Tonya married her first husband, Jeff Gillooly. I don't know why that was so hard for me to say. I know how to say his name. I'm probably not saying it right. He also served as her manager a lot. So Tonya met Jeff when she was a teenager. She was like 15 when she met him. And while her parents were going through a divorce. And then when she dropped out of high school, she moved in with Jeff. They married when she was 19. Though she accused him of abuse and filed for divorce twice. During her first separation from Jeff, she stated that she was filing for irreconcilable differences, and she also filed a restraining order against Jeff to keep him out of her apartment or at any skating rinks, stating, quote, "He wrenched my arm and wrist, and he pulled my hair and shoved me. I recently found out he bought a shotgun, and I'm scared for my safety." It was reported that Tonya seemed much happier when she was away from Jeff, and she had even met another man who she became engaged to. But not long after, Tonya announced that she and Jeff were back together. And she said, quote, "I know it seemed like I was happy, but something was missing. And now I know what it was. Jeff and I love each other more than ever." She also stated that they were going to counseling and that he had changed. She could see it in his eyes. They officially divorced in 1993, but in early 1994, they again attempted to reconcile. I did read that part of the reason that they reconciled in the first place was because the figure skating confederation or association or whatever the fuck they call themselves said that it would hurt her chances in the Olympics or in competition because, I don't know if they said the same thing to men who were going through a divorce before a competition, but it wasn't a good look to separate from your husband and to get a divorce, no matter how filthy of a human being he is. Women should stay married. Doesn't look good when a woman tries to break up her family. So, take several seats, figure skating. Fuck off. Anyway, there is nothing that I've heard about this guy. And you can believe Tonya Harding or you cannot believe Tonya Harding. There is nothing that you could tell me, even if Tonya sat down and said, "You know what, I lied about all of it and he never abused me or anything," I wouldn't believe. This man is a sack of shit. There's no getting around that. He's terrible. He's just not a good guy. He's just not a good guy. He's never been a good guy. I don't think he's ever going to be a good guy. But yeah, let's talk her out of being with somebody she was happy to. Now, she was happy to be with and seemed like a healthier relationship. You could also argue that her getting back together with Jeff totally ruined her life. But okay, figure skating association, you know what's best, don't you? Because it doesn't look good for a woman to get a divorce. Anyway, leading up to the 1994 Winter Olympics in Lillehammer, Norway, Tonya developed a rivalry with Nancy Kerrigan, who was an Olympic bronze medalist and the 1993 U.S. national champion. The two participated in competitions together, and the rivalry kind of naturally formed. Nancy Ann Kerrigan was born on October 13th, 1969 in Stoneham, Mass. to Brenda and Dan Kerrigan. Nancy was the youngest of 3 children, and she was the only girl. So while growing up, she would tag along with her older brothers to the neighborhood ice rink where they would play hockey. And according to Nancy, she became a quote-unquote tomboy. Not my favorite phrase, but that was her own word. Nancy's background of playing ice hockey with her brothers made it easy for her to transition into figure skating at the age of 6. I am always amazed at people who are just like, oh yeah, just, I was already on the ice anyway, so like I started figure skate. Like, what? I've been ice skating one time. I almost fell over 47 times. Like, I just don't, it's amazing to me. But she was already on the ice. She picked it up really quickly. One of Nancy's instructors commented on her talent, and as they say, the rest is history. And that's when her family began investing in her Olympic career. The first competition that Nancy competed in was the Boston Open, and she took first place at the age of 9. After that, she quickly went on to win local and regional competitions. The cost of her sport of choice was high, and her father had to work extra jobs to make ends meet. So, with her big goals and dreams in mind, and because of the family's financial sacrifices, Nancy worked exceedingly hard. She woke up every day at 4 a.m. to train before school every day. That's just so much. Like, I get it. She went to the Olympics. That's incredible. That's a lot for a child, that's a lot for a child. Like, and if she wanted to, that's great. It sounds like she did want to. I haven't read anywhere where Nancy or anyone says that her family forced her into this or anything like that. But man, that's a lot for a kid. After graduating from Stoneham High School, she enrolled at Emmanuel College near her family home, and she majored in business. Despite her studies, Nancy continued to pursue her figure skating dreams, and just a year into college, she entered and subsequently won the National Collegiate Championships. Just months after that win, that's when she won the bronze medal in the U.S. Olympic Festival. The following year, she won the gold, which earned her the right to represent the United States at the 1992 Winter Olympic Games in Albertville, France. France. If you listen to My Dad Wrote a Porno, that's how Jamie says France. And Alice and James, let his ass have it. He was like, a France. And so then it was like a thing for the rest of the podcast where they would be like, he'd be like, well, and we would go to France. And they're like, oh, France. France is so nice at this time of year. And France. It was so funny. Anyway, also they're like British, so they don't sound like country bumpkins saying France. But anyway, Nancy took the bronze in Albertville, and she took her first national title at the U.S. Nationals in Phoenix, Arizona. However, in 1993 at the World Games in Prague, she received 10th place. And after this, Nancy told the media, quote, I just want to die in tears. Yikes, that's so sad. Like, that's another thing too, when like your entire identity, and that's really at the heart of this case. Your entire identity is rooted in your physical skill in a sport. That is naturally going to dwindle. As far as I know, there are not 70-year-old figure skaters in the Olympics. I could be wrong. I don't watch the Olympics. I don't believe in the Olympics. I don't believe in sports. You guys know this. But I don't think that there's like 70-year-old figure skaters. So eventually that's going to fade, right? Your power is going to fade. Your speed is going to fade. Your all of those things are going to fade as you get older. Or God forbid, you get hurt to the point that you can't play anymore. You don't want to be fucking Uncle Rico, So it is really dangerous, or can be dangerous for other people and yourself, to have your entire identity rooted in just one thing, which if taken away from you, you feel that you no longer have a purpose, or, you're not worth anything. That's really sad. To get 10th place in a competition, I don't know, and I'm not the most competitive person in the world, but fuck it, you win some, you lose some. As long as you tried your best, I'm happy, right? And that's going to happen. And also, you're going to get to these world stages. I'm not trying to brag here, but I won the spelling bee in first and second grade, okay? At my little K-8 school in bumfuck Tennessee. But if I'd then gone on to nationals for whatever reason, I might be up against some people who can spell more words than I can. It just, things change, you get to bigger stages and you're like, oh, okay, I've been working really hard. I've been doing really well. this is a different ballgame. I've got to get in there and train a little bit harder. I've got to, like, it's just really sad to get to that stage. And also, I'm not good at this. I look at my failures and not my successes. So I'm like literally being such a hypocrite right now. I wish I could do better at this. It's something I'm working on. But to then turn around and be like, I got 10th place, like, and be that. And there's healthy guilt, there's healthy disappointment and things like that. But like, that's more shame. And it just makes me sad, But for Nancy, this setback just lit a fire under her, and she trained harder than she ever had before. And her hard work paid off. By the end of 1993, she won 2 major international competitions. So, as we said, Nancy Kerrigan and Tonya Harding had formed a rivalry after competing against each other for years, including the 1992 Olympic Games, where Nancy had gotten the bronze and Tonya got 4th place. So, leading up to the 1994 Winter Games, Tonya was training to become an Olympic champion, as was Nancy. Now, remember Jeff? Just Jeff? He's Tonya's husband and manager, and he knows that an Olympic skating champion was looking at making more than $1 million in appearance fees and endorsements, and he wanted that money for Tonya. I'm sorry, I pronounced Jeff wrong. He wanted that money for Jeff. So, like any sane and rational person, Jeff grabbed his pals, and they came up with a plan to make sure that Tonya won. Jeff and 3 of his friends, Derek Smith, Shane Stant, and Tonya's bodyguard, Sean Eckert, sat around a living room table in Portland in 1993, just 2 days after Christmas, and they came up with their plan. They discussed different ways of taking Nancy Kerrigan down, one being to stage a car crash to maim her. You're doing too much. But they decided, you know what, a good old-fashioned leg whacking should probably do the trick. The men decided that Shane Stant would be the one to do it with an iron bar, and that Derek Smith would be waiting with the getaway car. On January 6, 1994, Shane Stant approached Nancy after practice at the Cobo Arena in Detroit, Michigan, and he hit her on the right leg with a 21-inch collapsible baton. Fortunately for Nancy, and unfortunately for this group of absolute fucking idiots, she only sustained bruises and no broken bones. But also, unfortunately, it was severe enough that she had to pull out of competing in the national championship the next day, and it became known as the whack heard around the world. On January 8, 1994, Tonya Harding won the gold medal, which guaranteed her a spot at the Winter Olympics in Lillehammer, Norway. However, in support of Nancy, fellow skaters offered her a spot to compete in the Olympics as well. Well, that didn't go the way you thought it was going to, did it? Jeff. So the FBI launched an investigation into Tonya's bodyguard, Sean Eckert, and on January 12th, he confessed to his involvement in the attack. The thing for Sean is, a lot of people saw him that day, so it didn't take long for the FBI to put the pieces together. He didn't even wear a mask. Okay? He ends up singing like a canary, and he incriminated Shane Stant, Jeff Gillooly, and Derek Smith. In Eckert's confession, he stated that he was told by Jeff that Tonya had made 2 phone calls to Nancy's training rink on Cape Cod to determine when she was going to be practicing. And he also said that Gillooly told him that Tonya was worried that she would be asked about the calls and that she had come up with an alibi to explain them. After Eckert's confession, Shane Stant confessed to striking Nancy on her right knee, and Derek Smith confessed to driving Stant away. Tonya publicly denied any involvement in the attack. On January 14, 1994, Nancy held a press conference and did her best to remain positive. The United States Figure Skating Association, that's what it was called, I don't know, I could not remember, were deliberating on whether or not Tonya Harding should compete in the Olympics. They ultimately decided she would be allowed to compete because not only had she repeatedly denied any involvement, there was no evidence showing that she was involved in any way. On January 18th, Tonya submitted to FBI questioning with her lawyers in tow. Her interview lasted over 10 hours, and 8 hours in, her lawyer read a statement about Tonya's separation from Jeff. It read, quote, "I continue to believe that Jeff is innocent of any wrongdoing. I wish him nothing but the best. However, After this, Tonya changed her story after several hours of denying any involvement, and finally she admitted to lying to the FBI agent and said she knew Jeff had been involved, but she didn't know till after the fact. And yeah, she should have told somebody, but she really cared about him, and so she didn't want to tell him. Then on January 27th of 1994, Jeff Gillooly surrendered to the FBI 4 days after a warrant was issued for his arrest. Tonya continued to deny any involvement, but Jeff confessed that he had orchestrated the assault. In his confession, he did implicate Tonya Harding, Sean Eckert, Shane Stant, and Derek Smith. Tonya put out a statement around this time and said, quote, "Despite my mistakes and rough edges, I have done nothing to violate the standards of excellence in sportsmanship that are expected in an Olympic athlete." In exchange for a lighter sentence, on February 4th, 1994, Jeff testified against his ex-wife Tonya and pleaded guilty to the crime of racketeering. Just days after this, Tonya and Jeff's trash was searched, and they found notes that revealed Nancy's practice schedule in Massachusetts. It was determined by a handwriting expert that the notes were written by Tonya Harding. On February 17th, the media went absolutely ham when Tonya and Nancy shared the ice at an Olympic practice session for the first time since the attack. Can you imagine how scared Nancy must have been? Nancy decided to wear the same outfit she'd worn when she was assaulted and later told the media, quote, "Humor is good, it's empowering." Then on the night of the Olympics, February 25th, 1994, Tonya Harding abruptly stopped her first performance due to a broken shoelace. And so she's having trouble. She's not doing well at all. She's not performing well at all. And so she goes up to like where the judges are, and there's like obviously footage, but also pictures of this where she's got her leg like hanging over the side of the rink, showing them like, look, my shoelace is broken. That's why, please let me reskate. You know, there's a problem with my costume, basically. Like if they had a problem with their costume, if they had a problem like with a shoelace, something like that, where they're not able to skate right, they can, you know, the judges and I guess referees can deliberate and decide to let them reskate or like, no, you're just going to have to deal with it. So they did let her reskate. It did not help her at all. She might as well have kept her performance from the first time because she didn't do any better once it got fixed. Tonya Harding ended up taking 8th place at the Olympics that year, and many people called that karma. However, Nancy Kerrigan had her best performance to date that night, but still took second, taking home silver. 16-year-old Oksana Bayul won the gold. And I do remember that name. Dude, figure skating in the like early mid-90s was the shit. I couldn't tell you the names of any of them now. I remember hearing Oksana Bayul all the time because I know how to pronounce that. So it's just so funny. Like, and Christy Yamaguchi and Tonya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan. Like, I couldn't tell you any of them now. After the Olympics, the evidence was mounting against Tonya, and on March 16th, 1994, she finally pleaded guilty to conspiracy to hinder prosecution, which was a Class C felony offense. Tonya's lawyer, Robert Weaver, negotiated a plea bargain for Tonya that ensured that there would be no further prosecution. Tonya's plea admissions were that she knew of the assault plot after the fact. She will not admit that she knew anything beforehand. Settling on a cover story with Jeff and Sean Eckert, witnessing payphone calls, and lying to the FBI. She received a sentence of 3 years probation, 500 hours of community service, and a fine of $100,000, which, remember, she didn't make any money that year. You know, they were counting on that $1 million in appearance fees, but they didn't get that. So $100,000 is tough. She was also tasked with setting up a $50,000 fund to benefit the Special Olympics, reimbursing the Multnomah County Prosecutor's Office $10,000 in costs, undergoing a psychiatric examination, and participating in any court-ordered treatment. Just a few months later, Tonya Harding's 1994 national championship title was revoked, and she was forever banned from the United States Figure Skating Association. Jeff, her ex-husband, was sentenced to 2 years in prison after he publicly apologized to Nancy. He has since changed his name to Jeff Stone. Sean Eckert, Shane Stant, and Derek Smith were all sentenced to 18 months in prison, each with no fines. Eckert pleaded guilty to racketeering, while Stanton Smith confessed to conspiracy to commit second-degree assault. Following the 1994 Olympics, Nancy Kerrigan was part of a Walt Disney World parade. Nancy was heard on her microphone saying to Mickey Mouse, "This is dumb. I hate it. This is the corniest thing I've ever done." Nancy! After this, to clear her name, she told the media that her remark had been taken out of context. She was not referring to being in the parade, but on her agent's insistence that she wore her silver medal. She stated that her parents had raised her not to brag or show off accomplishments and that she had nothing against Disney or Mickey Mouse. I mean, maybe. I don't know. Let me know what you think. Nancy married her agent, Jerry Solomon, on September 9th, 1995. The couple went on to have 3 children together, Matthew, Brian, and Nicole. Though in April of 2017, Nancy did say that she had suffered 6 miscarriages in 8 years while attempting to have her 3 children. That is absolutely heartbreaking. Absolutely heartbreaking. Nancy became the spokeswoman for Fight for Sight in 2003. In 2004, Nancy was inducted into the United States Figure Skating Hall of Fame. And in 2008, she was honored at the Ice Theater of New York's annual benefit gala. Like, you guys, Tonya, Jeff, all the other people that helped. In the 90s, figure skating was, again, like, I do remember the names of, like, these people. But what they did, they wanted to have the opposite effect. They wanted Nancy to be taken out and nobody think about her ever again. And like, we don't have to worry about her. We're going to win. We're going to get the money. We're going to be remembered, blah, blah, blah. Tonya, anyway, her name will be the one that's remembered. Her name will, be the one that, is the winner, blah, blah, blah. And they did the exact opposite. I don't know if she would have been honored in all of these things without this situation happening. Perhaps she would have still. I mean, I don't know completely, but like, you guys had the exact opposite effect. You skyrocketed her into stardom. She was still able to compete when you didn't want her to. Like, you didn't do anything and you got yourself kicked out of figure skating for the rest of your life in the United States. Like, it's just crazy. After her Olympic career, Nancy appeared in a few competitions, but ultimately focused her career on performing in a variety of ice shows, such as Champions on Ice, Broadway on Ice, and an ice show adaptation of Footloose. In 1994, Nancy hosted Saturday Night Live alongside Aretha Franklin, and in 1995, she appeared on Boy Meets World in an episode titled Wrong Side of the Track. In the episode, she helped Eric Matthews discover his potential for skating in a dream sequence. On January 24th, 2010, Nancy's father, Daniel, died after a fight with his son, Mark. According to a police report, Mark stated that he had wanted to use the phone, and his father wouldn't let him. The two struggled, and Mark put his hands around his father's neck, and he fell to the floor. The report states that Mark said that his father was faking it. Daniel was found unresponsive on a blood-spattered kitchen floor, and the autopsy determined that the 7-year-old died from a heart rhythm disorder. The autopsy also showed that his larynx area was fractured in the struggle, and he had underlying hypertension and heart disease, and his death was ruled a homicide. Mark was living at home with his parents after his release from prison in 2009 after serving time for assault. In 2008, his parents sued him for money and services that they provided him, but the case was dismissed. The Kerrigans issued a statement through their attorneys saying that the findings were premature and inaccurate. Ultimately, Mark was found not guilty for the death of his father, but the jury did convict him of a separate charge of assault and battery. And that's like not necessarily related, but like fucking wild. Okay, so moving on to Tonya. Amidst the scandal in 1994, on February 15th of that year, an explicit videotape clip from 1991 of Tonya topless was shown on A Current Affair, and 3 still frames from the clip were published in The Sun. And it was reported that her ex-husband Jeff had given them to the media for an undisclosed sum of money. Do you see why this guy is dirty brown fucking water trash? On July 26, 1994, Penthouse announced that their September issue would feature stills of Tonya and Jeff having sex from that same tape. The 35-minute sex tape was also copied and marketed exclusively by Penthouse. Where have we heard this before? Jeff and Tonya used the same agent to negotiate equal payment on the sale. I mean, at that point, you have to because it's out. It's been sold. They have it. They're putting it into production. At least make money on it. In 1994, Tonya was cast in the movie Breakaway, which was released in 1996. She also appeared on the game show The Weakest Link. After her skating career, she ended up taking up boxing. In 2002, she boxed against Paula Jones on the Fox Network celebrity boxing event, and she won. In 2003, she made her official women's professional boxing debut, where she lost a 4-round split decision against Samantha Browning. She did continue boxing for a short time, but her asthma ultimately ended that career, and her overall record was 3 wins and 3 losses. After skating and boxing, Tonya has worked as a welder, as a painter at a metal fabrication company, and a sales clerk at Sears. In 2017, she stated that she worked as a painter and a deck builder. In 1995, Tonya married Michael Smith, but they divorced a year later. And then on February 22nd, 2000, Tonya attacked her then boyfriend, Darren Silver. She repeatedly punched him in the face and threw a hubcap at his head. She was arrested and initially pleaded not guilty to misdemeanor charges. However, in May of that year, she admitted to attacking Darren and was sentenced to 3 days in jail, 10 days of community service, and a suspended sentence of 167 days. She then married Joseph Price on June 23, 2010, and the couple had a son named Gordon on February 19, 2011. In 2018, Tonya went on The Ellen DeGeneres Show and stated that she is still active in skating. She practices 3 times a week. Both Nancy Kerrigan and Tonya Harding have appeared on Dancing with the Stars. Nancy got further than Tonya did. There have been several movies and documentaries about the 1994 scandal, the first being Tonya and Nancy, The Inside Story, which is a dramatized movie that aired in 1994. NBC did a special called Nancy and Tonya. ESPN did a 30 for 30 episode in 2014 called Price of Gold, which you can watch on Amazon. A Hulu documentary that features both Nancy and Tonya, as well as the stars of the movie I, Tonya, called Truth and Lies, the Tonya Harding story. And then, of course, the movie I, Tonya. I've not watched any of these, but they're all out there. Nancy has said that she found it, quote, bizarre that Tonya was seeking redemption through a biopic. I say biopic, but I've heard it pronounced biopic. I really don't know which one it is. She said, quote, at this point, it's so much easier and better to just be. It's not really part of my life. As you say, I was the victim. Like, that's my role in this whole thing. That's it. It is weird, that's for sure. A bizarre thing. The whole thing was crazy, being that it's a story. In a 2018 interview for the New York Times, Tonya talked about moving from Oregon to Washington because Oregon was buttheads. Honey, I think there's buttheads everywhere, but okay. She said that she disappointed them and questioned how she could disappoint a whole state, a whole country even. She has returned to ice skating, though she cannot coach or skate in the USFSA, as we call the United States Figure Skating Association. The girls who skate at the same rink as her look up to her, and she's a role model for them. She could teach at the rink, but she wouldn't be allowed to bring her skaters to any competitions due to her ban. So she said, what's the point? Why even try? In the article, it's expressed that Tonya doesn't need anyone to take up for her now, but that they should have back in 1994 when everything went down. She said she wants people to understand her side of the story and her history, essentially to understand why things happen the way they happened. I don't love that narrative. I don't love she's saying that she's taking accountability, but I also saw an interview where she and Nancy were together in an interview, and it was, I think, maybe 4 years after the incident occurred. And she said, Nancy, I really do. I want to apologize to you. I really do want to apologize for being at the wrong place at the wrong time. And Nancy's face was like, the blinking guy in the GIFs. That's kind of what her face looked like. Are you fucking... Then don't say anything. Just don't even say anything. You're sorry for being at the wrong place at the wrong time? I couldn't tell if she was saying, I'm sorry that you were at the wrong place at the wrong time, or that I was at the wrong place at the wrong time. What does that mean? I would like more information on how she got Nancy's practice schedule. If is anybody able to call up there and get that information? Did she pretend to be Nancy's mother? Did she pretend to be a journal? Like, can you just call somewhere and be like, what's her exact schedule? Like, surely they're not giving out that information just anybody. So I'm assuming that Jeff, Sean, whoever were not the ones that called. Maybe she called and said, I want to be sure I'm not booked at the same time as her or something. I don't know, but that's very interesting to me. I don't know. But she still says she had nothing to do with it. She didn't know till after the fact, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. You let me know what you think. There are people who believe her. There are people who don't believe her. Growing up, I always heard negative things about Tonya Harding, so I'm sure that has shaped how I feel about it. But it is very difficult for me to believe that she had no idea that it was happening beforehand, especially when she continued to kind of like change her story and let it evolve and like, oh, well, yeah, maybe I did know this. And oh, well, yeah, maybe I didn't. I don't know. It doesn't help that you lied as much as you lied. And now you're saying, but now I'm telling the truth, you know? So I don't know. Let me know what you guys think though. I mean, obviously an iconic 90s moment and no murder this week. So a little bit lighter, but I love you guys. I'll see you next week. Bye. If you like this episode, be sure to like this episode and follow the show so that you never miss out on new episodes. Get in on the conversation on Facebook and Instagram. You can find us at Killer Queens Pod, or you can join our Facebook discussion group at Killer Queens Podcast, where we discuss cases covered on the show and all things 90s. If you want to submit a case to be covered on the show, visit killerqueenspodcast.com/case submission and just complete the form. And if we cover the case, we'll give you a shout out on the show. Lilas.